Welcome to Dungeon Academics. My name is Thomas and I will be your instructor. I'm continuing my series of less produced videos because I am still without a computer to work on, so I'm recording on my phone, no script, no visuals, no editing, so whatever happens, happens. In today's video, I would like to talk about the FRAP system I've developed for my own game that I'm slowly patching together. I'd like to talk about what it does, why it does it, and how it works. I'll point out a recent video by Desks and Dorks. I'll link it in the description when they talk about a fundamental flaw in Dungeons and Dragons, and they go over a lot of the same topics that I'm feeling very strongly about and explain it in a very nice way. So check out their video after mine, or now, whatever, as you see fit. What do I want a core mechanic to do in a roleplay game? In many roleplay games, ability checks are a stop sign for the story. The story is ongoing, and then there is some obstacle that you must bypass or beat in order to continue the story. If the enemy's fortress is on top of a cliff, you must find a way to the top. If you do not find a way to the top, then the story stops. If you climb halfway up the cliff and fall off and die, then the story stops. Or you get to the top and the story continues. The skill checks you make are just a stop sign that you have to get past to continue with the story. I don't want that. I want the game part of roleplay to be integrated into the roleplay part. I would like skill checks to be an opportunity for storytelling, an opportunity to affect what's going to happen. So I have a philosophy that's called success at what cost. Unless you are catastrophically unlucky with your rolls and somehow manage to fumble a check, success should be fairly easy. But at what cost? A skilled character might be able to bypass some sort of roadblock in the story without too much hassle. But if you are not an expert in that area, if climbing cliffs or deciphering codes or bending the bars of a jail cell is not your strong point, then what's going to happen? How are you going to continue the story? Success at what cost assumes that passing the test may come with some negative side effects, and a greater deal of success is more about mitigating or ignoring those negative side effects. In this game, there will always be a time pressure. So the idea of saying, oh, I failed this one, I'm just going to try it again, comes with an inherent penalty built in. It's taking more time. That will have a negative effect down the line. Alternatively, or additionally, with every skill check, there will be some potential hazard. If you are climbing a cliff, maybe you dislodge rocks and take some damage up on the way up. Cut your hands on sharp stones or thorns. If you are trying to pick a lock, are you going to be able to do it without leaving any evidence of your activities? So if you choose to, when you roll your dice and get action points, if you choose to spend them all on getting successes and bypassing whatever skill check there is, then potential hazards will have a negative effect on you either immediately or further down the line. On the other hand, you can choose to play it safe and use your action points to ignore those hazards, but then you haven't necessarily succeeded, and the time pressure element comes into play. Only by scoring really well on your dice, by being very skilled or very lucky, do you have the opportunity to overcome the challenges and mitigate the hazards. So this idea that skill checks will automatically have some sort of hazard associated with them. When you're making an attack, do you really want to hit? Well, you can almost always hit your opponent. The question is, how much do you open up yourself to counterattack? That would be the potential hazard there. So every skill check has hazards associated with it. The FRAP system, as I've called it, stands for flip, remove, add, plaques. Plaques are going to be these sort of cardboard tablets, maybe yay big. And when there's a skill check, the Games Master will lay down plaques representing the challenges that you have to overcome, the obstacles that are making it harder, and the hazards that could potentially hurt you physically or narratively. Say you wanted to search a room. The challenges are the things that you are looking for in that room. The obstacles are things that make it harder. It's dark, for example. There's an obstacle, makes it harder. And the hazards are things like alarms, traps, anything that's going to make potentially cause you damage or alert guards to your presence. When you roll your skill check, you roll all your dice, you'll get a number of action points to spend. And these action points can be used to overcome the challenges. In this case, it would be finding the things that you're looking for. But they can also be to mitigate the obstacles. For example, the fact that it's dark means you can't find anything until you've overcome that it's dark. Alternatively, the hazards, things like the traps and the alarm, you can choose to focus on finding the things that you're looking for and then suffer whatever consequences those traps and alarms bring on. Alternatively, you could concentrate on spending your action points to not set off the alarm, to disable the trap, but then you won't have as much success in looking for the things that you're looking for, and it will take more time to find them. So these action points are yours to spend. You choose the direction the story takes. You can choose success, but it might come at a cost. You can choose to play it safe and not get as much success, but then there's the time pressure element. So by removing the challenges, the obstacles, you can overcome them. Alternatively, you can flip them and there will be some positive effect. If you flip over a trap, maybe you've disabled it and learned something about it or been able to take it with you. If there's an alarm, flipping it could disable the alarm, making it easier to search. The other component is adding plaques. Every character may have abilities or equipment that would help in these circumstances. If you had, for example, a torch, you could spend a couple of action points to add your torch, and that would overcome the darkness obstacle. Maybe you have a trap disable kit. By spending a few action points, it makes it easier to disable the trap. Maybe you have certain abilities that make it mean you're better at searching. By spending your action points to add these abilities, you can improve the outcome of the skill test. So that's what these plaques do. You have plaques for your abilities and your equipment, and the Games Master has plaques for the challenges, obstacles, and hazards for each skill test. Now for your dice. Whenever you make a skill test, there are 4 values you have to look for. These are going to be your skill in whatever skill is going to be used, the ability, this like strength or dexterity, and then some sort of enhanced ability, epic ability, super ability. I'm tending towards hyper ability. It sounds very 90s, but so am I. So the hyper ability, and finally your player character level. Now, your hyper ability has a specific thing tied to it, a plaque with action points to spend it, to play it, and action points it provides. You cannot play your hyper ability plaque unless you have enough action points to use it. But by adding it to the challenge, you gain additional action points, more than you spent. The idea is that if you roll absolutely terribly on your dice, you can't necessarily activate your hyper ability. So it doesn't mean an automatic success. You need to have some success to use it, and then it gives you even more success, even more action points than you spent to activate it. Of the other 3 abilities, so this will be skill, ability score, and player level, you then order them from highest to lowest. So it doesn't matter which order they come in. If your player level is your highest one, then it's the highest one, and if your skill is the lowest one, it's the lowest one, or vice versa. The smallest value tells you how many rerolls you get. So this game is going to use dice with very high variance on it. So lots of very low numbers and a few very high numbers. This is because we know that rolling lots of dice tends to produce a bell curve-like result, but you can somewhat limit this by having very high variance dice. Rerolls become a lot more important when you have very high variance. So having a few rerolls is going to be really useful. The two higher numbers tell you which dice you're going to roll. Now the system for this is quite simple. I have a prop here, and here I have laid out some dice. There's D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and D20. These are just representing the dice that I want to use. The dice I want to use will be custom high variance dice. This is just as an example. They are literally blue tacked to a ruler. The higher number tells you where you start along this list. And the second highest number tells you how many dice you take. So let's say you had a search skill of 6 and an intuition skill of 4. I've just made those up. Those might not be the names we use, but 6 and 4. 6 is the higher number, so we ignore the first 6 dice, and then we take the next 4 dice, because 4 is the next highest number. That's it. That's the dice that you use. Ultimately, there might be, I'm guessing, 24 dice in total. What they are, what they look like, how many sides each one have, and how many points they have, yet to be worked out. That's just a maths puzzle, the kind of thing that I enjoy doing. But the question is which dice you take and how many you take. The first number tells you how many dice you skip. The second number tells you how many dice you take. And that's it. You gather your dice, you roll them all. You have a number of re-rolls from the third highest ability, and then you have your action points to spend. You can use your action points to overcome obstacles, you can use them to succeed in the challenge that the Game Master has set, and you can use them to mitigate, remove the hazards of their challenge. You could also use them to activate specialist equipment, or your hyper ability, or other abilities that your character may have. Then with your skill points, you decide what you're going to do, and you decide the direction the story is going to take. Do you find all the things hidden in the room without setting the alarms off or activating the traps? Can you climb to the top of the cliff without hurting yourself or without taking too long? Can you pick the lock open and access the security room without leaving signs of tampering on the door or setting off any alarms built into the mechanism? This narrative attempt to integrate skill checks into the storytelling is what I'm really looking for. I want skill checks that they're not stop the game, roll the dice, pass or fail. This is the outcomes that you have chosen to happen. So that's the FRAP system. A lot of work needs to go into this. I've been thinking about how to make this system work for years and years and years, and this is the system that I am most happy with so far. Of course, it may all change in the future. I am not committing myself to any system, but I believe this is the best one I've come up with so far. It's simple enough to work. It's rich in storytelling opportunities. There's lots of tactile things to hold and play. I love the idea of sitting around a gaming table and playing your abilities on these plaques and spending your dice to activate them. That's a sort of very interactive, gamey way of doing roleplay games. And as you may have noticed from a lot of my videos, I want to put the game back into roleplay game. So that's my ideas. Please let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your feedback on this system, and enjoy your next game, whatever it may be.